our first year we did this, we did kind of DoD focus. We went back more towards just Navy last year, and we're kind of opening the aperture back up. So we're excited to have Paul here to talk about the Army SBIR Sitter program. And he'll present for about 20 minutes, and we'll do some Q&A, and then we've got AFWERX online after that. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, great. So one last comp check for the room. Can folks hear me? Good to go. Thank you, sir. Great. Thank you very much. It's great to be here at NavalX's Small Business Workshop. I think I can say that the Army and their united efforts with our Navy and fellow services as it applies to the SBIR programs is pivotal as we look to industry to provide us with transformative technologies to meet all of our joint force requirements. And so in particular across the Army, both of our programs, SBIR and X-Tech programs, are really at the forefront of connecting small businesses to Army requirements, to Army handlers, to Army needs. Get up, pooch up front. And so today I want to share with you a little bit more about those two programs, how we're trying to accomplish the goals that we've set up within X-Tech and within Army SBIR, and then maybe talk a little bit more at the end of the project about some opportunities that are currently outstanding across both SBIR and X-Tech. If we can hit the next slide. So one of the things we like to highlight is that the Army's partnership with small businesses is really the critical piece to adopting these technologies we want to provide to our soldiers. And so we're trying to figure out ways within the Army to ensure that the barriers of entry in doing business with the Army are as low as possible. And so over the last couple of years, specifically within the SBIR program, but kind of legacy with X-Tech, which started in 2018, we've been trying to figure out ways to break down those barriers while obviously stimulating technological innovation, but really partnering with small businesses to meet our Army needs. And so right now, the SBIR program directly works with Army researchers within the Army labs. We engage directly with PEO, product and program managers, acquisition professionals, and the whole reason for those strong interactions and getting out into what we call our customer base is trying to figure out ways to maximize transition of Army SBIR investments into these programs. Hit the next slide for me. So because of that, the Army SBIR program, we feel like we're pretty uniquely positioned to identify and bridge the gap between industry, small businesses, and what our military needs. And so one of the key drivers to simplifying access for small businesses to participate in our programs is trying to focus ourselves on, as I said earlier, lowering that barrier of entry. We think we have a pretty good value proposition where we provide non-dilutive funding to small businesses. The value proposition to us is that the Army has access and secures these innovative technologies to address our defense priorities and help transition these technologies to the soldier. Over the last few years, based on not only small business feedback, but Army stakeholder feedback, we've really tried to refine our strategic approach and how we engage small businesses to partner with the Army enterprise across the board. And a key element to that is the Army's program structure. Right now, what we have in terms of which I think is a key differentiator between some of the other SBIR programs, is that we develop and publish our topics on a monthly ad hoc basis. And so what that does is it provides us a lot of flexibility in our approach where we're outside the typical 3 cycles per year. We're addressing Army needs live. So if a PEO comes to us tomorrow and says we have a gap, we can develop a topic and get it on the street very quickly. So that shortens that time to contract, it shortens that time to development through phase 2 or phase 2 sequential, ultimately shortening the time into that program of record. You want to go to the next slide? So right now, the SBIR Army SBIR and STTR program, we have actually 3 distinct programs within our portfolio. We have the modernization portfolio, which is primarily focused on the Army's 6 modernization priorities. That group mainly works with the Army labs and our S&T ecosystem. We have the STTR portfolio, which I'm sure most of the folks in line are aware of, which really focuses on partnerships with the small businesses and our research institutions, universities, federally funded research and development centers. And then for most of the talk, we're going to concentrate on today, which is the group that I sit in, is the Army's transition focused portfolio. We focus on transition, and we focus on developing topics with an Army program of record in mind up front. We're really interested in making sure we're brokering relationships not only between our Army customers, but the small businesses that we fund. And then another unique thing that our transition-based team provides is we have stood up a centralized contracting center of excellence whose sole purpose is to execute SBIR contracts, which is a new paradigm for the Army. But overall, these are different, they're distinct, but they're coordinated. They have a little bit of a different flavor when it comes to the submission process. But at the end of the day, TRL levels across the board are agnostic. It's really just based on Army needs when it comes to developing topics across the three. Go to the next slide. So, you know, I'm going to talk a lot about transition. I'm going to talk about a lot about flexibility. This is sort of a summary slide for folks who don't know much about the SBIR program, and that is, you know, obviously it's open to any U.S.-based small business. Our budget is a 3.65 congressionally mandated RDT&E set aside. Our budget for FY24 is $395 million. Our current phase and award schedule is reflected there. Our phase ones right now are up to 6 months of period of performance with $250,000. Phase twos, we go up to 18 months at $2 million. That's a little bit different because what we're trying to get after when it comes to those transitions is shortening those periods of performance to match the need of the customer. So that's not unique in the sense that we have the flexibility to, it could be 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. It really depends on the customer and what their requirements are. And then just 2 years ago, we stood up the Army SBIR Catalyst program. That program is a program that gives companies the opportunity for up to $15 million in SBIR awards with the matching from our Army transition partner and an integrator. And so that program is fairly new, but all of those lead up to what I think you guys are going to be talking about this afternoon, is that is, you know, how do we get these technologies, you small businesses, the companies we invest in a trajectory to a phase 3 award. And I'm looking forward to that conversation because I think the phase 3 is a little bit of a misnomer. I think there's some myths to dispel when it comes to understanding what a phase 3 is as it relates to SBIR funding. But so that's our approach. If you want to go to the next slide. So in the upper right corner here, we've got our FY23 award schedule. These are some metrics. We're really starting to get heavily involved in understanding metrics, trying to measure our performance and execution. But that's our FY23 summary. I mentioned before how we have our phase ones and phase twos. What I didn't mention is right now our current standard within the transition-based SBIR program office is that we award up to 5 phase ones, 2 to 3 phase twos, and 1 to 2 phase 2 sequentials. So we kind of adhere that award schedule based on the need of the customer and their bandwidth to handle that, because there's a lot of responsibilities for TPOCs to meet with companies and the contracting officer representative responsibilities that go along with that. But at the end of the day, it just kind of highlights the flexibility of our program. We're not locked into 3 phase ones, 1 phase 2, 1 phase 2 sequential, et cetera. We do have the opportunity to adjust the award sizes and the period of performance. I've got 3 projects right now. I run a immersive and wearables transition broker team. We'll talk about those in a second. Each one of those is at $3.25 million in a 24-month period of performance. We have the opportunity to go and get waivers to adjust, again, based on the need of the customer, and the customer for us is the Army, obviously. And then we have a lot of joint projects too. I should mention that diver performance monitoring project is actually a collaboration with the Department of Navy's SBIR program office as well. We do have the option to go to direct to phase 2. We've been seeing that a lot over the last couple of years, so that's good. We're trying to ease the burden for companies, trying to get those technical proposals to not be overwhelming. So our phase ones is limited to 5 pages, and our phase twos are limited to 10. As I mentioned before, the very next to last bullet there talks to how we do release our topics on an ad hoc monthly. It's monthly. It says often monthly, but it definitely is monthly, at least in this fiscal year. And then, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but our notification to companies for their selection and actual contract award has decreased from 30 to 60 days to previous numbers, which were north of 6 months, or in some cases, 12 months. And I can talk about why that's a key enabler, we think, to make it attractive to work in the Army, because those award turnarounds are pretty short relative to how the program used to be run. I think that's good for that one. If you want to go to the next slide. So that leads right into how. So between 30 to 60 days, how do we do this? So back in 2022, ASALT stood up the SBIR Contracting Center of Excellence. It consolidated contracting offices across the Army PEOs into one singular office. Previously, if a PEO, let's say PEO soldier, came to us with a topic, that contract would be executed out of their contracting office. And oftentimes, because SBIR contracts are kind of an added duty to those formal program of record contracting actions within the PEO, they tended to be put in, I'll say, the medium priority category. So they got a little bit less attention. And it just took longer for contracts to be to be awarded. But what we've been able to do is we've got a group of about 20 people solely working on SBIR contracts, phase ones, phase twos, sequentials, and our Catalyst projects as well. It's allowed us to standardize the contracting packages. It's the same paperwork for the entire Army. The PEOs, when they were separate, had different contracting requirements. Streamline the process, minimize the burden on the Corps and TPOCs while maintaining FAR requirements. And so we think we're really in a good spot in terms of engaging with Army and developing those contracts. But at the end of the day, what it really comes down to for us is that decreased time to award. So 30 days on average for phase one, 60 days for phase two. This is after the company's notified via email that they've been selected for award. So this for us is a big deal. I think it's a big deal for small businesses. We hope it helps kind of get after that, lowering the barrier of entry. Why do we want to work for the Army? Why do we want to apply to SBIR for the Army? And we think this is a key driver for that. I think that's good if you want to go to the next slide. So there's a lot on this slide. So let's start at the bottom. This is our typical sort of roadmap as it describes the phase one through phase three and beyond, potentially phase three and beyond process. We highlight this for a couple of reasons. One, it's just to graphically show the transition from 1 to 2 and phase 2 sequential, but also to highlight the fact that we do have this opportunity to go to directive phase 2. We have insertion points for different types of awards at different parts along that timeline, but there's also some exits you see at the bottom there. And the reason for that is we also are trying to be deliberate in our evaluation of technologies as they progress through each phase and provide our PEOs an opportunity to exit out if either they have a changing priority, if the technology isn't feasible, it just isn't getting to the TRL level that the Army stakeholder is looking for. So there's some ways that we can exit out of that if we need to. We think that's a smart way to approach the portfolio as a whole. Another way we've been trying to help companies deal with the red tape with working with the DoD or government, the RDT&E enterprise within the government as a whole, is by standing up these transition broker teams. Now, transition broker teams are simply a portfolio management construct where we have our portfolio managers like myself who lead the team, 20 to 25 Army SMEs, but there's technical SMEs from the Army laboratories have the deep technical knowledge that can advise TPOCs or companies if they have any problems when it comes to understanding the technology or developing the technology. We have acquisition professionals at the table who have the authority to insert plan for money into their programs of record. And then we have our group of business analysts who help us kind of understand, dual use potential for any technology that we invest in. And another thing we're highly focused on is making sure that there's a good potential for any specific technology to have that dual use, because while we do want to support Army needs, the last thing we want to do is have the small businesses solely look to the Army as their place where they can sell their technology. So we can help companies understand where some applications are for any given technology outside of what they think the Army needs. So that transition broker team, what it does is it kind of gets rid of the what was previously the construct, which it was a sole TPOC, a sole core was responsible for trying to understand where the transition of that particular effort would go. We can approach those issues and mitigate risk by addressing that as a team. So at any given point, at any given SBIR, the TPOCs or the companies can come to me or to us to get an audience with our team. They can do presentations, looking for different transition partners outside the original scope of the effort. We just feel that's a better way. It's portfolio management as a whole. It's not these singular R&D projects that are kind of isolated or siloed. So I think that's it for that slide. And then to that, we have right now in FY24, 6 transition broker teams. They're focused on very specific technology ecosystems. We develop these with feedback from not only some of our independent technology scouts, but also from Army PEOs. We've identified 6 technology ecosystems. So AI/ML, everybody knows, is the hot technology across the board. Autonomy, sensors, which is one of the groups that I run, climate and clean tech, immersive and wearables, that's my other one. And then contested logistics and sustainment is also just stood up this year as well. There's a 7th kind of bucket here that I don't have on this chart, but there is opportunities for folks to develop topics that lie outside of these 6. We're not trying to pigeonhole our customers within the Army to just these 6. So we have a number. It's only about $20 million per part of the portfolio, but there's opportunities. I guess my point is that you can, you're not limited to these 6 right here. So I think, yeah, and so if you go back one more, yeah, no problem. The other thing I think I failed to mention on the previous slide was that not only our independent technology scouts have identified these areas where the private sector is over-investing versus the Army, but we've also identified these areas that are critical to future Army needs as well. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so X-Tech. So shifting gears, we're going to go talk a little bit about X-Tech. It's interesting. Our X-Tech program we consider as probably the lowest barrier of entry, our friendliest front door for non-traditional small businesses to engage with the Army. This effectively is our version, and my boss might not like me saying this, but of Shark Tank, where companies can come in front of a panel of Army SMEs, they can pitch their technology, and there's a multi-stage prize competition where at every stage, the companies that get down selected are afforded cash prizes. Those cash prizes are from $5,000 to $10,000 to $25,000. And it's helpful for a number of reasons, we think. One is to keep those companies engaged because there's costs associated, for example, to travel or to take, develop presentations or understand, there's just business associated with coming to those competitions. So we help them offset that cost. But at the end of the day, the real goal is at the end of the finals, companies are positioned to get a SBIR Phase 1 or a Phase 2 award. And so that's what our X-Tech program. It's similar to the SBIR program in that it's non-diluted seed funds. They get companies who participate get direct exposure to the Army. It's really unique because the networking in this sense is really one-on-one because they're in the room. If an Army SME has a question, they can just walk up right after the presentation and have an interaction. So there's a lot of power in the networking when it's face-to-face like that. I think that's good for that one. Yeah, so this is a list of our values. I think one of the things we try to, applies to X-Tech, but it also applies to the SBIR program at large. We're trying to be timely and fast in the way we execute our competitions and how fast we get the SBIR contracts to award. We're trying to be very transparent, so direct feedback from the Army SMEs, not only internally, but also to the small businesses that participate in the program. It helps build confidence that these things aren't being done in a box behind closed doors, and we're trying to open up the aperture when it comes to that transparency. Partnership and engagement, we're kind of doing the same thing to some degree there. I said partnership at the very beginning of this presentation, and that is like, we want Army to be a better partner. And any way we can do that is getting the right people in the room or the right stakeholders at the table to directly engage with the SBIR awardees and X-Tech competitors at the very beginning. This is a summary of X-Tech since they launched in 2018. We've had 34 competitions to date, $21.9 million in those cash prizes I mentioned earlier. But those have led to $175 million in follow-on contracts, which are primarily SBIR phase 1s or direct to phase 2s. But we also run accelerator programs that gives companies who win the opportunity to have access to mentoring when it comes to developing either a business model, doing market research, developing a pitch. We provide that for those companies as well. The SBIR program has a similar mentorship program with our TABA services as well, so that it provides companies additional help when it comes to developing their commercialization plans as they think about what happens after phase 2. So very popular within the Army right now. We get a lot of press on X-Tech competitions. We really feel like it's a powerful tool, especially to engage non-traditional folks who don't typically engage with the SBIR program, because if you're a first-time comer to SBIR, it can be intimidating. The X-Tech, like I said before, kind of tries to lower that barrier to engage with the Army. And then at the end of the day, this reinforces the idea that we're just trying to be a better business partner, lowering the barriers, trying to make sure we have the right Army stakeholders at the table at any stage for any SBIR, any X-Tech competition. We stood up the Contracting Center of Excellence to decrease that time to award. We're releasing our topics on a monthly basis, getting outside the 3 per cycle, the typical release cycle, and again, networking and improving access to people within the Army that the small businesses wouldn't normally have access to. And then I think, so right now on the left, so work with us. We want to work with you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask right after this, or if you see me after this presentation. But right now, the X-Tech program has 2 open competitions with X-Tech Scalable AI. We have an X-Tech HBCU student program that closes in October. And then we have a couple things coming up. Our X-Tech Special Forces, which is going to be showcased at Soft Week next week. But we also have X-Tech Search 9. And so I failed to mention too, we as a SBIR program office do execute open topics. But of all the open topics that we release, they're kind of umbrellaed underneath like AI/ML open topics. So it's really not open. It's got left and right limits. I did one 2 years ago, wearables, open topic, physiological monitoring for soldier health and readiness. So wearable technology for physiological monitoring, soldier health and readiness. So they're kind of closed. They're not technically open, but our X-Tech competition, X-Tech Search 9 that opens in the fall of 2024, that's our only true open competition. All technologies, all companies with any technology are invited to submit for X-Tech Search 9. And then as far as the SBIR program goes, right now we currently have 4 phase 1s in solicitation. We have 2 direct to phase 2s. And then we have 14 STTRs that are on the street, all 3 of those right now. But again, next month, those numbers will change. I know for a fact I have about 10 phase 1s coming up in the next 2 months. So with that, I think that's good for me. Happy to answer any questions from folks on the line or how.
Yeah, so no questions online just yet. So folks online, if you have any questions, you can post them in chat. Any questions in the room? We have a couple minutes. to take a few questions. I'm going to go over to hear someone who hasn't spoken yet, and just please make sure you're speaking into the microphone.
Yeah, for the X-Tech, do you open for academic or just for the industry?
I'm sorry, say it one more time. For X-Tech?
The competition.
Yep.
Is it open for everybody or just open for the industry?
Yeah, it's small business. Yeah, but it doesn't have, for X-Tech competition, it's unique because the competitions do not have to be US based. So international companies are invited to apply to X-Tech.
I see. Must lead by industry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you saying versus like a university?
Yeah.
Well, but
Yeah.
yeah, you've got the HBCU one, right?
Ooh, yeah, so the
So it
HBC,
depends.
so that's a good point. So yeah, we do have the HBCU program, which goes for historical, right? So colleges and university. But that's for HBCU specific universities. But so, yeah. Sorry about that.
Can you talk a little bit about how your topics are developed or sourced? Are you getting them primarily from for SBIR? Are you getting them primarily from the PEOs, or are you sourcing them from MAGCOMs or even at lower commands?
So I would say primarily right now, we're getting our topics from the PEOs and the Army labs. I would say the bulk of our topics are coming from the PEOs directly. We're not equally distributed, I would say, in terms of our portfolio across all PEOs, because certain PEOs have certain focus areas. So AIML is heavily populated with JPO, A&A topics. The wearables one that I have, there's no official Army program of record. So that portfolio is a little bit different because it's mostly lab and as we wait to see if there's a program of records being stood up within the Army for wearables specifically. So, but we're always looking for ways to expand. So even with the Army Reserves, other PEOs we're not engaged with, that we've traditionally been engaged with, we're trying to figure out better ways to be inserted into those programs. I think our value proposition is use our money to support your R&D needs, early stage or late stage, wherever.
Yes, from higher education, can you tell us your success, some of the challenges you've had with the HBCUs?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have a lot of exposure with that specific program. I would say like anything, we're customer-based and it's all about the outreach. So I don't have specific numbers to reflect how many HBCUs are engaging with the X-Tech HBCU program, but I 100% can get you that information. If I can get a card or information, POC from you, that'd be it. But yeah, we're always continuing to try to do outreach and try to bolster our participation across the board.
Paul, I'll do one here, maybe one more online or in the room, but we talked about this earlier with Jason in that industry can't help write topics anymore based on the latest reauthorization. But is there a mechanism which you have kind of, putting feelers out to industry, or is it really just in conversations and creating topics?
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. Industry cannot write a topic, which makes sense because there's some inferences that they're writing topics for you that they might get a leg up on the competition. But what we do, what I do specifically for the transition broker teams that I run, is if we get an email into our SBIR mailbox where somebody wants to highlight a technology, I'll invite him to our transition broker team meetings just to do a presentation, because there's lots of technology out there that people are not aware of, and that might spark interest from any PO or any Army lab to develop a topic. So we do give those opportunities as they come. And then I think X-Tech is another way for that to occur.
Great. We had one more question, and then we're gonna move on. But as Paul said, he's around, and I know he's staying here for one-on-one, so you can find him later.
In the interest of time, if you can't answer this, I'll catch you later. But you said you get your topics from the Army labs. Army Applications Lab right now has a BAA focused on Army modernization priorities, using a fairly simple white paper. It's not really a white paper, it's a portal entry system. Does that feed the Army topic list? If the various selection committees look at that and say this is something that meets an Army capability gap, does that then flow to you for a potential SBIR topic?
Yeah, that's a good question, because if we went back to the circle that showed the 3 different programs, Army Application Labs falls into that modernization priority lab. I personally have 3 collaborations with AL right now that are transitioning from their program over to the transition-based program or the applied program. So I guess the short answer is yes, they would feed into some Army programs of record. I just don't know which one specifically you're talking about exactly. I'm not tracking that one, but there have been examples where a SBIR project from AAL has come over to the transition side of the house, if that makes sense.
Paul, thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we really appreciate you hanging around afterwards too.
Yep. Thank you.
They're on. So our AFWERX speaker just hopped on. So Daniel, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute, and you can do a comms check, and your slide is next.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
And we can hear you loud and clear. Thanks, Daniel. The floor is yours. And I'll have your slides, so just let me know when you want to go to the next slide.
Hey, good. Advance the slide, please. Good morning, everyone. I'm Daniel Carroll. I'm the App Ventures Director. I am the Department of Air Force SBIR STTR Program Manager Director. Appreciate the time to meet with everyone. Unfortunately, I'm currently at another program manager review for AFWERX. Here going up I'm at the Pittsburgh Science Center. Otherwise, I'd enjoy being there in person down in Norfolk. So I'm going to provide here a short overview of the AFWERX SpaceWorks and also what we do here within App Ventures within the Department of Air Force SBIR program. So AFWERX is an organization underneath the Air Force Research Lab. We have 4 primary divisions. Within App Ventures is focused on the SBIR STTR program. My counterpart divisions, Spark and Prime, I work with. Spark is really focused upon the looking at what does the warfighter need, looking at Spark cells, what is going on at the bases, where the innovation is happening from the grounds up, from the men and women, the airmen and guardians who are actually providing the support for the Air Force and Space Force, what ideas they have, basically expanding that set there. So they collaborate with us in order to take their ideas and foster into working with small businesses. Now we also have Prime. Prime is one of our divisions, and they are focused on looking at opportunities where we take small businesses and non-traditional businesses, how they look for opportunities to transition them over the Valley of Death. So you see those various areas that right now Prime has focus on agility, autonomy, integration, and orbital prime. Across the entire set of AFWERX, and also SpaceWorks has a role in here where SpaceWorks is focused on the Space Force user. I see the remote speaker loud and clear. The room mic input is to Zoom. One of the things which we have over 6,000 contracts every year. We award roughly about 1,500 contracts for the Department of Air Force in the SBIR, STR realm. Our budget is $1.4 billion a year for SBIR, STTR. Go ahead, next slide, please. So one of the things I want to talk about is the overall process. I think you might have heard more about this previously, so I apologize for duplicating on that. We start with the industry, and we also go through the SBIR, STR phases of phase 1 and phase 2, and then going into a phase 3. Some of the things that's unique about Air Force and Space Force is that we're looking at the operational imperatives. There are 7 operational imperatives from the Air Force Space Force. There's also 3 overarching themes across those OIs. That really grounds us to really what is the priority for the Air Force Space Force? How does that feed into the proposals that we select for those areas? It's a little more. We also have the capability to do TAC by strat by. So if you successfully won a phase 2 and you have a sponsor who can submit and put in for matching funds for taxpayer strap buy. Also talk about a little bit about we do both open topic and specific topic with the Air Force and Space Force. Then we have a number of programs which through AFWERX, such as Challenge, Refinery, Colliders, Spark Cells, Spark Tanks. Those are really the ideation. That's the idea generation and really driving us to what the requirements and the needs are to push into the phase 1, phase 2 pipeline for SBIR, STTR. Go ahead, next slide, please. So I apologize if you already hit this already, but the SBIR is a 40-year-old program. We participate with along with many services and agencies, really to look for innovation and really fund small businesses. These are a U.S.-based business. We also looked and tried to foster the economically disadvantaged areas. Trying to partner up the federally funded research and development efforts for commercialization. We provide non-dilutive capital. When we provide an SBIR award, we're not taking ownership of the company. We're not taking ownership of the data rights. We're providing an effort to provide either a white paper analysis or a prototype to advance the state of the technology. Go next slide, please. Small business technology transfer is a complementary to the SBIR. That's where the small business is partnering up with the research institute. That could be a not-for-profit, that could be federally funded research development center, FFRDCs, or it could also be a university level. That allows them to really to find an opportunity within the university may have already been developing, then take it further into a commercialization area or to a military need. Right now, within across SBIR and SBA, there's 5 organizations that use the STTR program. Go next slide, please. So the SBA, roughly in FY24, I believe is roughly about $5 billion that was set aside across the Small Business Administration. Of that, roughly about, I think it's close to $2 billion set aside for the Department of Defense. Of that $2 billion set aside, the Department of the Air Force, between Air Force and Space Force, is $1.36 billion for FY24. Again, this is a congressionally mandated program. It needs to go to a U.S.-owned small business going against the technology and the needs of the Air Force and Space Force. So here's an example of some of the participating agencies within the SBIR program, including the Department of Defense. One thing I really want to take an opportunity here is that if you're a small business, it's imperative that you also look at, find out who your customer set is and realize there may be more than one customer out there. For example, if you're working in artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these areas have various programs and interests in artificial intelligence, machine learning. So that might be one avenue about that. You're looking at just aerospace, Navy, Army, NASA, Air Force, all have aerospace interests in there. So use this opportunity that if you are applying for SBIR programs, you're also applying for STTR programs, let's see if there may be other agencies that have other solicitations out there, have similar sort of needs that your small business is addressing. Go ahead, next slide, please. And here's all the DoD agencies. We've already spoken to the Navy here before, and then these are similar. Again, there will be overlap in our mission sets, and there may be different needs, but use that to your advantage. Find out what interests they have, find out where you may be able to apply your innovation to their needs. Next slide, please. So let me touch upon a little bit about what makes us unique within the Air Force. Is that Air Force started the Open Topic program. Last year, Open Topic was adopted and a congressional mandate for all DoD services to at least have one Open Topic here. So we do Open Topic. We do Open Topic 4 times a year currently. We're asking small businesses, what is the innovation or technology they have? Bring it forward to that. We'll do an assessment, and those items will be selected for award to go on to the next round. Key thing is that all these programs are highly competitive. You need to be able to have a very strong case about why is your technology unique? What's the dual use purpose for your technologies? Also, what's the transition opportunities for the military? So now counterpart to open topic is specific topic. That's where 3 times a year we're putting out on solicitation with OSD guidance. These are the items which we're interested in from across the Air Force Space Force. I believe last round we did over 60 topics. Um, Again, these are things which we have a known problem that we're asking industry either at phase 2 or phase 1 level, provide us a input on that proposal to either provide a white paper analysis or doing a prototype against that. We'll also list out whether we need a SBIR or STTR. So from the perspective of a government team member, is we have avenues for the government to participate on all these areas. From the government side, the Air Force or Guardian can submit a specific topic. Those are assessed and evaluated and competed. From the government side, open topics critical that we have government team members provide as augmentees to do the assessment. Government team members also are signing off customer memorandums to be in the area there. Both open topic and specific topic really require government technical point of contact. They require that person to be in the loop and doing the day-to-day oversight of what the small business is doing, and be ready there to receive it and push it further onto transition. Now, let me talk a little bit about transition. One of the areas which we developed was a program that's unique for the Air Force. It's a pilot program underneath the Small Business Administration called Strap Buy and Tack Buy. That's where we're looking at phase 2 efforts have already been selected. They can have a government champion submit their idea and capability for additional matching funds. That's really de-risking capability. It might be adding additional capability, maybe addressing compliance issue before it gets it. Overall, we're trying to bridge that valley of death for acquisition. So we've had a prototype in the phase 2, but we know there's additional work that needs to be done before it goes into a commercial product or military use product, or even a program record. So Strap Buy and Tack Buy is the Air Force opportunity to do that. Next slide, please. So here's a pyramid sort of thing, reverse funnel, where we talk about how phase 1 feasibility study can lead into a prototype. We also have capability that for SBIR, we go direct to phase 2, where we have done the feasibility study from the government perspective. We can go and award a direct to phase 2. So you have a wide variety there: Air Force topics, Space Force topics, open topics, specific topics, phase 1, phase 2s, direct to phase 2, SBIR, STTRs. We use all combinations. We do roughly about 10 solicitations or notifications a year, a combination of those areas. All successful phase 2s within the past year from the when the Air Force customer can compete for Tack Buy and Strap Buy through the Air Force submission from the government side. Again, that's matching funds up to $15 million for Strap Buy, $1.9 million for a Tack Buy. The goal of the SBIR STR program is to provide that avenue for phase 3 transition. You probably already discussed here, but for that small business, for that technology or innovation, if they've been selected as a phase 1 or a phase 2, that allows them to, from a government side, to go back and go to a phase 3 contract award without competition. Allows them for that innovation and that small business to go directly to a phase 3 contract award. If the government has a need and the requirements of the need and the resources and the contracting opportunity, go directly to phase 3. Go ahead, next slide, please. So here's a overview where we're doing our open topic roughly about 4 times a year. These are all subject to change. We work constantly with OSD and SBA about how we improve the process. We're trying to do this. We have a mandate to do within 180 days from closing out a solicitation to getting the award to the small business. Typically, the open topic has been doing that within 80 days. We're constantly looking for ways to increase the quality and quantity of our proposals and the selections and the transitions across open topic and specific topic. Go ahead, next slide, please. And here's a review of the current DoD broad agency announcement for the specific topic. Again, this is a subject change because we're looking closer with the OSD to find out if there's other opportunities to have a more improved or better cadence with small businesses and our stakeholders. Go ahead, next slide, please. So this is an opportunity about what we're looking at. Currently, we're looking at open topic. We have the Directive Phase 2 going out. It was open on April 24th, and it's still open. It closes May 23rd. And then we have 24.2B. That is the pre-release, and that opens on May 15th. So we're currently evaluating the Stratify and TACFI 24.2. This is our second TACFI and Stratify notice of the year. And then in the fall, we'll be opening up the program year 25 for the Stratify and TACFI. Go ahead, next slide, please. A lot of these are probably covered. I'll cover them quickly. That it needs to be a U.S.-owned business for SBIR, STTR, 51% owned. One of the new requirements this past year is that we are required to do a foreign ownership control and influence risk assessment on every one of the selectees. So that is being done with our partners for us to look at the risk assessments for due diligence. But next slide, please. Again, key thing is that the DoD only awards the contracts. So we're not doing the grants. So we award the contract for SBIR or STTR. Next slide, please. So here's a look up. I believe all the slides are here. The key thing is look at AFWERX.com. That has the latest and greatest information. We also have a Ask Me Anything where we once a week we have a different topic. We'll have our subject matter experts out there telling you about the current solicitation or future solicitation. We'll also talk about some of the broader 101 going for AFWERX and App Ventures or even SpaceWorks. We'll bring in some guest speakers there. All those are recorded. So we have 20, 30, 40 hours worth of recorded material all about the AFWERX, App Ventures, processes and opportunities. Go ahead, next slide, please. So key thing is that for a specific topic, we're limited about how much we can talk about the items. If you're going and asking a question about a specific topic, it needs to go directly to the technical point of contact for that person. He or she to answer that. Also make sure that during the open period, anything that needs to be posted through the DSIP. So I believe that is almost my last slide. Go ahead, next slide. And there's a list of resources out here. So I cover a lot of information for the Air Force and the Space Force, SBIR, STTR. Open up any other questions, anything I can help you with. I'm really excited for the small business be in this sort of environment, work with the government partners, find out more about how we can get the innovation out there.
Daniel, okay, there we go. Thank you very much. So I think there was one question, you sort of talked about it. How can an airman submit a specific topic to AFWERX? I didn't know if you wanted to add any detail there, and then I'm gonna go to the room to see if there are any additional questions.
Yeah, I'll definitely say one of the things that we realize that our customers are the small businesses, but our stakeholders are our end users and the program executive offices that help us do the acquisition side, and the people on the flight line. So one thing which is unique about our program is that we really, we have the opportunity for end user to be on the flight line. They can be a technical point of contact out there. So they can sign off on a customer memorandum. That means if they find interesting technology, interesting innovation, they can sponsor that to be an open topic. Now, likewise, they also have an opportunity if they say, hey, I have this really hard problem, and whether they're coming from the laboratory, or they're coming from a program executive office, or they're coming from a organization. If they have the capability to do acquisition within their organization, then they can submit a specific topic. So again, we have that right there, the U.S. Air Force team group email. They can submit it in there, and my team will get back to you saying, here's all the websites, here's the team's information, here's where we submit. We're actually going through the an out of cycle for the Air Force for doing the this will be after 24.3C and before 25.1A. And we're doing the topic submissions right now between now and the next 3 weeks, I believe. So there's opportunity for the airmen to submit. So use those links below for the emails. My team will get back in touch with the government team members to connect you with the right organizations and the right websites.
Great, thanks, Daniel. Questions in the room? Anyone have a question for Daniel online? No question. Oh, Mark, yay. Daniel, did you hear that?
No, I did not. I apologize.
Okay, sorry. I'll give you the version, the mic. So with a TAC by Strat by, companies completed the Air Force phase 2. If they're looking to go beyond their current customer, maybe more DoD wide, but maybe even further in Air Force, is there any advantage or disadvantage to doing that from your side?
The only thing you have to be cautious of, the current limitation for attack by and strat by is that we use the sequential phase 2. The current legislation requires that a company for any given project, they can be awarded one phase 1 for that project, and they have the ability to use a sequential phase 2 where they can have additional SBIR, STTR funding. SBIR, STTR funding cannot be applied towards a phase 3. Typically, what we do is we have matching funds that come on board where the customer can provide their matching funds on a phase 3, or they also add additional funds onto the sequential phase 2. So the teams need to be aware of that, and that's I just want to make it's a little bit complicated, so that if you have multiple interests between SBIR organizations that are using SBIR funding. If you're limited to a single phase 2, the SBIR funding can only apply towards the baseline phase 2 or the sequential, sometimes it's called phase 2B thing. It cannot be applied towards the phase 3. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So you have to make sure that it's well coordinated. Now, that being said, if you have multiple organizations who have SBIR funding, they can also partner and collaborate on that sequential. It just needs to be coordinated ahead of time. So you cannot have multiple sequentials against one phase 2.
Okay.
The way we talked about is if you have a phase 2 with AFWERX, the best person to talk about a sequential phase 2 is really your TPOC. It's your technical point of contact will be the first entry point. They're the ones who be talking about, especially if you're going through the TAC-FI route, where you're looking for having matching funds, or the strat-FI route. They'd be the ones, if they don't have either the requirements or the resources needs, they're the ones who know that ecosystem. You can probably point you into whether they have a lab partner or a major command partner or someone else who would be has that similar sort of need for that innovation. So going back to James' question, is that typically if you have a question about a sequential phase 2, we can tell you some of the technicalities about it, but our first avenue is going back to saying, who's your customer for your phase 2? And they're the ones who would be the best to guide you into the next realm.
Great, thank you. We got time for one more question if we have one in the room. No, that's okay. Okay. Daniel, thank you very much for your time and dialing in while you are traveling. We really appreciate your insights into the Air Force side of SBIR, STTR. And now we are going to turn it over to Mr. Scott Jaworski, who's going to talk Marine Corps Sibber Sitter and stands between us and lunch. But I know, right?
As stated before, not that one. Good? Yeah, I'm sure he is by now. You good? All right. Okay. So as stated before, my name is Scott Jaworski. I work with Mr. Jeff Kent, who is the actual head of the Marine Corps Systems Command and Marine Corps SBIR program, period. Let's go ahead to the next slide. The organization of Marine Corps acquisition is a little different. Kind of stated before that, like, for instance, our aviation assets come actually from NAVAIR. There is no Marine Corps Air. The Department of the Navy is a little unique compared to the other departments in that it has both the Marine Corps and the Navy. As a result, we kind of have this bifurcated acquisition systems at times. The vast majority of Marine Corps acquisition falls under Marine Corps Systems Command, which is located in Quantico, Virginia. And what's not located in there is at PEO Land Systems, which is strictly dedicated to Marine Corps interests as well. Both of those are in Quantico. There's a couple small organizations like PM Traces, for instance, which is training systems, which is located down there in Florida. But for the most part, everything that if you're talking Marine Corps acquisitions, Quantico is really kind of the hub of it. Conveniently, that's also where our requirements folks are as well. So that's very fortuitous in that you kind of have the folks that are developing the requirements and the folks that actually have to go out and execute those are right there together. So if anyone's ever heard of the term MAGTAF, Marine Air Ground Task Force, there's a couple people that know what I'm talking about. That is the thing that all Marine units are based on. So you have a command element, and underneath that you have a ground combat element, which is sort of the pointy end of the spear. Then you have the logistics combat element, which tends to be more of the, obviously, logistics, the support folks, and the aviation combat element. So those three things make up practically every Marine Corps unit that's out there, one way or another. So some time ago, Marine Corps Systems Command roughly aligned their program management offices under that construct. So that's pretty much what it looks like today. However, like every other good military organization, we like to, confuse people and switch things up about every year or so, seems like. So, you can take this when you get this slide later. Look. Okay. But it'll probably be changed in the next month or so. And as stated before, our aviation assets fall under NAVAIR. All right, so that's kind of like, so our focus though really is mostly on not so much MCTISA, but really under the aviation, as you were, the ground, the combat service support, the tactical radios, things like that, but also a lot of work. No, sorry.
They're not hearing you.
You're not hearing me online?
And you're turning to the left a lot.
Okay. All right. I've almost never been accused of being too quiet. So this is a unique experience for me. Like saying, geez, you don't talk enough. Doesn't happen too often. So anyway, a lot of what you see over there on the right-hand side is more of like our major end items. So, the amphibious combat vehicle, the MTVR, the medium tactical vehicle replacement, all those kind of like big things that you associate with the Marine Corps, those tend to mostly be there. under PEO land systems. All right. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, this one I'm gonna kind of power through because we've heard this now, I think, what, 4 times, 5 in this? So, yep, this is what we do. The biggest thing that Jeff definitely wanted me to put stomp for everyone is all of our topics do come from Marine Corps personnel. So whether that's a government civilian like myself or a uniformed person, that's where they all come from. That's kind of across the board. There's ways to talk to us if you've got something that's cool, but for the most part, it's got to come from preferably a uniform guy. Frankly, that it always has a lot more wasta if it's coming from someone who's in the fleet that's actually out there saying, "Yep, I have this need. We need you to get this for me." Next slide, please. So, as a general rule of thumb, this is kind of how the Marine Corps looks at its SBIRs. First of all, top line, everything is associated with a requirement. I said that earlier when I talked about Marine Corps acquisitions, how our requirements developers are right here with us. Every single thing that the military acquires has some sort of requirements document. Sometimes they're very short, sometimes they're ridiculously long. So we've got to be able to, what we can't do is say, hey, here's this brand new widget. No one's established a requirement, but hey, you should probably buy this. There's got to be some sort of established requirement. And it may be that maybe you're only making something to help out an established requirement, but it's got to be something we've already got. If you look at the way these things normally go down, kind of at the top is frankly the thing we don't have that much, which is hey, there's a requirement for this and nothing is filling it. All right. Does that happen sometimes? Sure. But it's not quite as common. Currently, we're working on a SBIR that is basically it's a flexible display. We've got an established requirement for it. We think it's got a lot of potential for the ability for folks to have something like on their wrist or something, whether it's for command and control or even just having a technical manual if you're underneath the truck and you want to be able to see how to work on that thing. That's one example of that right there. Another good example is how we can have a technology that's going to help us, reduce how much it costs for us to maintain a particular piece of gear. The MTBR is a truck. It's the Marine Corps' medium truck. It's ginormous. It's like 28,000 pounds, and it takes a lot to switch those brakes out on the current system. So we're looking at a current SBIR, which is a spherical brakes, it's called, and we are hoping, if this thing works out, that it's going to be able to take it from a 6-man job to a 1-man job. Manpower reduction is a huge thing in the Marine Corps right now because, frankly, we don't have enough people. We're trying to get more folks on the pointy end and less folks doing work on trucks and things like that. So sometimes it can also be something where it's something we've already got, but someone can come to us and say, hey, we can make this better. Hemp fiber is something that historically the military has kind of shied away from because of certain preconceived notions, but it turns out it's a really, really good product and it's really good for uniforms. So we're in the process of looking at that right now. Yeah, therein lies the preconceived notions. So it doesn't quite work that way. Yeah, not even a little bit. Okay. Also, sometimes we'll have a system like if anyone's been following the Marine Corps of late, we have had a bit of an issue for a long time with our amphibious assault vehicles, like since when I was a Lance Corporal, and that was a long time ago. And so we're developing the amphibious combat vehicle. One of the things that we have a SBIR right now that is actually improving just on that particular piece of gear, which hasn't even been fully fielded yet. We're improving the exhaust system. And then finally, anything that we can do to kind of reduce the size, weight, and power and improve safety. There's the example that's used here is a high voltage antenna protection. It's basically, for lack of a better phrase, it's a fuse that if you're walking along and your antenna, hits a high voltage wire, it's going to short out or you get too badly damaged. Obviously, that would be a bad day. Sometimes it's something as simple as just taking a current old system that's been around forever and no one's bothered to update it and getting it updated. The Expeditionary Portable Oxygen Generator System, EPOX, the old version of that literally came in something the size of a quad con. If anyone knows what that is, it's a very large container, and it was not man portable by any stretch of the imagination. So we have a new version that's coming out now that is much more compact. It's going to be able to actually be lifted up by multiple people, but it's still actually going to be able to be lifted up. We're going to be able to put it on the back of an Osprey, all of those kinds of things. One of the things from my perspective, and my background is I started out infantry and switched over to artillery when I shifted over to the dark side and became an officer, is that a lot of the focus for a lot of DoD acquisitions is on the big ticket items, the things that are big and sexy, the things that go boom, all that kind of great stuff. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm all about things that go boom. But a lot of these things that we've been able to see solutions with the SBIRs are the things that are less sexy. And maybe they've been around forever. Maybe a bigger company that could produce a good product, they're not as interested because is the bang worth the buck? We currently are in the process of replacing our expeditionary blood refrigerators. It's a pretty simple piece of gear. It's basically a Yeti with a battery, but it's going to save Marines' lives, all right? But it's not a big, huge, sexy program. And we were able to put that out there via a SBIR and take it from the Vietnam era refrigerator that we had before, which barely fit onto a Blackhawk, and get into something that now a corpsman supporting Marines is going to be able to just carry off and take out. That's the kind of stuff that we are really looking for, the stuff that's going to help that young Marine in an austere environment just survive, and because that guy's not necessarily going to be operating, a Tomahawk. So that's the kind of work that we tend to look at quite a bit. Next slide, please. Okay, Marine Corps SBIR Expo. This is something that we started doing about 5 years ago. We try to do this on more or less an annual basis. But what we try to do is take a lot of our phase 2s, sometimes even phase 3s, and essentially do a little bit of a show and tell with Marines there in Quantico. And we target Quantico because we can kind of get both sides, both extremes. We can get the folks that are the requirements generators and get them interested in a piece of equipment. We can also get the acquisition folks that ultimately are going to be writing the check to get them interested in it. But more importantly, Quantico also has a lot of young Marines, whether they're, whatever capacity they're working there on the base. We get this into their hands early on in development and say, okay, does this thing make sense? What do you think of this? And they get a chance to actually use it, sometimes in a pretty operational environment. Sometimes it's just a bit of a show and tell. And we always get really, really good feedback from them at that point, where they're able to say, yeah, this is nice, but actually, so one of the examples was that refrigerator, where there's a little display unit. They couldn't see it that well, and they were able to explain why it was important that we can get that fixed. And it got fixed early on in development. And I think in the long run, it made for a better piece of gear, and it saved the developer some hassle later on. So it's kind of an example of, you've got really, really smart people, like all of you, that want to do the right thing, but can't necessarily speak Marine Corps. I got a bunch of young, awesome Marines that can't necessarily speak engineering and product development. And then we can kind of bring those two together, make sure that each side understands the other at that point. The other thing it does also, and has been alluded to more than once, we have a whole bunch of people that when I say SBIR within the Marine Corps, even within Marine Corps acquisition community, that go, what is that? I've never heard of that thing before. And then I have to go through this whole spiel. When we do these, we kind of get a whole new crop of folks that I'm explaining, this is why SBIRs are a good thing. This is why you should be interested in trying to target things like that. And again, not just focusing on the big, huge, extremely high dollar items that are going to take forever to get through Congress anyway, let's just go ahead and focus on some of the small things that can really help you right here, right now, today. Plus, it's a lot faster. Okay, that's it for that slide. Okay, and this is actually my last slide, so we can kind of, like I said, we're going to go we're going a little faster here because I'm between you and lunch. As stated before, this is a chance for any of you to that are interested in doing this. If you want to see kind of like, hey, here's how can I help? Whether it's the Marine Corps in particular, there's obviously going to be a lot of crossover with the Army, the Air Force, the Navy as well. Actually that's the wrong URL in there. The email that was at the front, which is sort of a global box. Jeff Kent is the guy that actually owns that, but that's available to myself and all the rest of his team. We can triage your questions or whatever and say, hey, yep, point you in the correct direction for what maybe your widget may fill this requirement, may fill that requirement. We can help you out with that. And yeah, so I think that's it.
We have time. So
We
can
do have
ask
time.
if there's
Okay.
questions.
All right.
Questions?
You want to do the one online? Sure. Yeah, go.
No one online can, yeah.
No one online can hear you.
Okay. All right. We're good. I can hear me.
Sir, you talked about the Marine Corps Expo. When is the next expo?
The next expo, so the expo is sort of separate from us, obviously. That's actually run by the Marine Corps League. It typically goes in the May-ish timeframe. I have not actually looked to see what that is. I will say, speaking for myself, I have mixed feelings on the Marine Corps Expo. In some ways, it's nice because you get to see a lot of the guys maybe you worked with before. I would warn you that the people that are there, especially from the acquisition community, are absolutely getting bombarded. So if you're in the Quantico area and you want to go to that, it is a good thing to go to. This is definitely don't interpret me as saying don't go. I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, if I go to that, I'm sure to land something. It is one of those things that so many people go to it, and you can get bombarded pretty quickly. But it is also a good time to go and see what some other folks are doing. One of the things that I like to do is just kind of go there almost incognito and just sort of see, okay, what's the art of the possible right now? And I've seen some interesting things, especially folks that come that maybe they don't normally deal with the military, but they've got a widget or a piece of maintenance gear or whatever. Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Yep. So online. So Ben has asked, how would Marines submit a topic problem to your office? Can it come from a Fleet Marine or does it have to come from like the PEO level?
No, it can come from a junior Marine can do that. Honestly, we almost would prefer that. I would always recommend that if a Marine has an idea for a topic, though, that don't just slam something in there and throw it up. Talk with your commander, talk with your senior staff NCOIC, and kind of let them help massage it a little bit and get some input from them that way. Because SBIR.admin@USMC.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yep. Questions in the room. Luke, I'm going to come to you.
Hey, greetings from a fellow 0802.
Awesome.
So when I think Marine Corps SBIRs, I usually think like Office of Naval Research, Code 30, Peter Squire, and that whole crew.
Sure.
So are the SBIRs for the Marines still administered through ONR still, or have they separated?
No. So we get funding from it ultimately does come through Office of Naval Research, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but
yeah.
Jeff actually controls that. So it's like he gets it.
Your office and his office are able to take those ideas and those topics pertinent to the Marine Corps,
yes,
and make sure they're represented.
ONR does not screen for us.
Okay, great.
It's on us.
And then finally, Are RIFs still a thing? The rapid
I
innovation?
believe they are.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I believe they are. Let me get back to you on that one.
Sure.
I don't want to
Thanks.
step on it too hard.
Just to answer Riff real quick, yes, it's reauthorized, it's not funded.
There you go.
Is Marine Corps Cyber the same thing as Quantico Cyber, even though it's in the same building?
So I cannot confirm or deny that because I believe that is the same. But I would, if you are looking to obviously there's going to be a cyber element for Marine Corps Base Quantico, but I don't know if they're co-located or not. To be honest, I haven't delved too much into the cyber. But I would address that. If you have a cyber, if you have a cyber interest, I would address it there, and then that'll go up to the Marine. Unless you have something specifically that's like, hey, I have a thing that would, I'm struggling to figure how this would work, but something specifically for Marine Corps based Quantico. Either way, I would just go to the Marine Corps that way. To answer your question.
Hey, Scott, do you collaborate with Luis Vasquez that much? I know he does a tech monthly collaboration with various companies come in. Can you talk maybe about how the collaboration?
So Luis works, Jeff falls under Luis's office. So I work for Jeff, Jeff works for Luis. So yes, I do. I mean, much to my chagrin, but yes, I do. No, Luis is a great guy. Ciao.
Question.
Yeah.
So I'm with, I work in Navy in IWS. One of the things that I use a lot is our NavyCyber.com website and searching and finding out who's gotten awards and phase 1, phase 2. Does Marine Corps, and I had the same question for Air Force and Army, do you guys have a similar website that allows us to look and see who's gotten what?
Yeah, Jeff did not put it on the thing. I believe he does, but I need to go back. That was the one as some of the other folks are going through, I'm realizing that website's not up. So I will get that. I'll get an update to that, and we can push it. We can push it out from there. Yeah, that's an oversight on